What kind of what hat are you wearing there?
Guess who?
Yeah, very nice.
Guess who? Yeah,
very nice, ladies and gentlemen. That's the legendary Rudy Sarzo, man. And I was going to start this off. You've had one of the most interesting and diverse careers of any musician I think I've ever run into. At the current, playing with the Guess Who. How in the heck did that whole thing come together?
It's a long story. I'll make it as short as possible. I was doing a tour with the Jeff Tate version of Queensryche, and we were doing Operation Mindcrime, and part of the Operation Mindcrime storyline is Sister Mary.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of female vocals in that on that record, originally recorded by Pamela Moore.
Right.
On this tour, we had Sass Jordan
Wow.
playing the part of Sister Mary. Now, Sass is married to the current singer and guitar player for the Guess Who, Derek Sharp. Derek's been in the band for like almost 20 years now. And so when they were looking for a bass player, when the original founding member bassist, Jim Cale, retired, and Sass suggested me, and there you go.
Okay, and that's the story. Now, wasn't my buddy John Moyer? He's a friend from San Antonio and from the Texas days. Wasn't John Moyer playing bass for a while with the whole Jeff Tate project?
Yeah. We would switch around. John, whenever I couldn't do something, but for whatever reason, John would step in and play. And we did one final show, Queensryche show in Seattle, at the legendary theater.
Yeah.
I forgot the name of it.
Yeah.
And we both play bass in some songs and stuff like that. Yeah. I love John. He's great. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, it's a weird story. I started off playing in bands myself, and then went on to be a runner for a lot of the shows down in San Antonio and in the Texas region, and actually worked the Operation Mindcrime tour as a production assistant and runner, and worked with a guy named Howard Underleager, who was the lighting director. He did Tesla. He worked with Rush for a lot of years, and just some great times. And you've played with some of the craziest singers known to man. I mean, Kevin DuBrow, David Coverdale, Ozzy, just to name a few. I know there was a little bit of bad blood with regard to the latter when you left Ozzy's band after Diary of a Madman and going back to Quiet Riot. Are you on good terms today? I mean, or do you even stay in touch with Ozzy and that whole family anymore?
Well, actually, I don't stay in touch with a lot of the musicians I play with.
Yeah.
Having said that, that doesn't mean that we're on bad terms. It's just that we have our own lives. And I've been doing this for this year, marked my 40th anniversary. So you just cannot keep up with everybody. We usually, say hello and whatever regards on social media,
Yeah.
And but no, I mean, I'm in really good terms with Ozzy and Sharon. As a matter of fact, when the movie God Bless Ozzy came out, I had the honor of just sitting right next to Sharon during a private screening of the whole thing, and just basically we held hands during the whole thing, just because it was very emotional for the both of us to watch it for the very first time.
Yeah, no doubt. And you were really, really tight with Randy, who was just inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, to me, as a rocker, a lot of times they don't get it right. I mean, Iron Maiden's not in Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Like, what? Come on. But Randy, they got this right. Tell me about your relationship with one of the greats. Did you know how his legacy would be viewed at the time you were playing together, or were you just like, man, he's a really good guitar player?
Well, when playing with Randy Rhoads becomes your everyday normal thing to do, you still acknowledge it. But see, one thing you have to take into consideration, that outside of the bands that would open up for Ozzy, I really did not go and watch any other bands.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like I would, like a fan would.
Sure.
You're living in Pittsburgh, right? Just picked up any town, and every week there's bands coming through, so you're able to compare, last week's guitar player or singer or whatever to this week, and so on. With me, it was like, this is all I know. I know it's great. I know this is the Super Bowl every night, but can I really compare this to anything else? Because the only comparison is, let's say, Motorhead opening up for Ozzy, Def Leppard, very young Def Leppard. This is prior to Pyromania. This is prior to Phil Collins from Girl joining the band, who also Girl opened up for Ozzy that same year in England, in the UK. So, so my, it's like musically, I'm at the Super Bowl every single night. I cannot compare it to any other game.
Wow.
But I know these are the best of the best right here. These Ozzy, legendary singer already. Tommy Aldridge, iconic drummer. And then you got this new, Randy Rhoads. And I know the thing is, we didn't have the social media then that we have now. So you cannot even watch videos of yourself saying, the band saying like, oh, wow, this, and then compare it with other videos of other bands performing at the, in the same era. No, you can't. You got nothing. So you're very pigeonholed into this. This is great, but you really, really, really get the magnitude of the greatness of the band and Randy Rhoads once he passed away and he wasn't there anymore.
Yeah. What do you think made him so unique? I mean, obviously he brought a lot of classical influences into rock and heavy metal, but what in particular do you think made Randy so unique?
Yeah, he was the most rocking. And by rocking, I mean he had this metal. He had metal. He had metal before metal was actually what we know metal as today. He was one of the pioneers of many metal genres just because of the style of playing rhythm guitar and harmonic construction of his compositions. So he was the wonderful combination of a really schooled musician, music theory. He knew how to read. Very rare, because remember, most musicians, including myself, I was originally inspired to become a musician because I did not come from a musical family like Randy did, but I had this is a way to meet girls. So it wasn't until later on that I really gave myself a musical education. I went to college, studied music, and so on. But Randy was raised in a music education family. His mom started a school called Musonia that's still operating today. It's in North Hollywood, California, in the LA area, and so. That's what he knew. He wasn't doing it because of the girls. He was doing it because that's the way he was raised. He had, it's in his genes, his DNA. His brother is a musician also, Kelly, and, mom and dad and all of that. So this is his world, and that made him very, very unique in a world where, let's say, outside of Eddie Van Halen and maybe other couple of guitar players who were mostly known for being session musicians, everybody else was just, we were just rockers.
Yeah.
Not necessarily very well educated outside of music theory, outside of what rock and roll is all about. We knew rock and we had the passion for rock. Randy was more than that.
Yeah. And along the same lines as that, you also did some stuff with the great Yngwie Malmsteen. And Yngwie came from a classically trained background. Were they similar? It seems like Yngwie, though, has got such a signature, and he tends to go back to the same arpeggiated styles in just about everything he does.
Well, I'm going to give you my perception based on what I experienced with him.
Okay.
Yngwie is also one of those rockers. He's got the soul of a performer, a rocker, but he's classically trained. And also Adrian Vandenberg, it's not necessarily exactly like Yngwie in his choice of his compositions and the way that he's going to approach it, because Adrian is one of those guitar players very classically trained, but also blends a lot of blues into his playing. Whereas Yngwie, in order for him to blend blues into the set list, he will keep it. All his original compositions are very classically, the language of the music, you know, the theory, the harmony, it's all classical, right? But then he wants to blues out, and we would just do one or two Hendrix songs, and then he would go nuts, you know, playing blues, inflections, and well, basically pentatonics and all that. Okay.
Sure. You know, it's interesting you bring up Adrian Vandenberg. Let's talk a little bit about your time in Whitesnake. Those videos from the self-titled album really put you on a different level with the audience that you were exposed to with the whole MTV thing. How did that relationship come to be? I know you didn't play on the actual album, and it's like David Coverdale fired the entire band and then brought in all you know, sexy guys to come in and do the video stuff. How did that all come to be?
Yeah. There's a little backstory to that. Well, actually, I have been on MTV with at least 4 or 5 videos with Quiet Riot. So, the audience was familiar with what I did. And so was David Coverdale, because Whitesnake was the opening band for Quiet Riot in 1984. Okay. That's how I met David. That's how I met all the guys in the band. That's how I was aware of the dynamics, intergroup dynamics. And so I left Quiet Riot, and I was, along with Tommy Aldridge, we were asked originally, before that record was recorded, to join the band. But since I understood about certain conflicts going on, I declined. And then Tommy decided to decline thereafter that. And so a couple of years later, once the album was done, is when David reached out to me and Tommy to actually come in and do the video. And that's when I met. I mean, I had done with Quiet Riot some small shows with Adrian Vandenberg, but we didn't get to hang out a lot. And that's and Vivian I kind of knew locally. So that's how the whole thing came together. By the time that we got the call to come in the video, it was the only remaining member of Whitesnake was David Coverdale. So I knew it was going to be a safe situation to come into.
Yeah. I remember that tour with Whitesnake and Quiet Riot. That was a good one. I mean, Kevin DuBrow was certainly on top of his game for sure.
Oh yeah. Well, he's every time I play with him, even after in the reunion in 1997 to 2003, he was always on top of his game every night. I mean, he lived to get up on stage and perform.
Yeah. He was a hell of a front man for sure. And as much as I love Adrian Vandenberg and Vivian Campbell, I don't think that there's a guitar player on the planet that has the tone of John Sykes. What he was able to lay down on that Whitesnake record, the guitar really sings. It's almost like a piano on distortion or an organ on distortion. That's really, really cool. Now, we just lost Tawny Kitaen. And, I've got my own personal story being her chaperone when I was just a teenager working as a runner in San Antonio. That was an awkward experience in the front row as an 18-year-old kid having to chaperone Tawny Kitaen while her husband...
Is that with Whitesnake? With Whitesnake?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Now, according to her and some videos that I've seen recently, just trying to do a little bit of research for our discussion, she says that she had a lot more to do with the success of that album than just being the hot woman dancing on the Jaguar. What was your perspective? Did you get a chance to really know Tawny that much?
Oh, I mean, I knew Tawny when we were hanging out on the bus, but then, it's a whole different dynamic relationship. Like the wives and girlfriends were, they were always, welcome on the bus. At one time we had everybody's girlfriend and wives on the tour bus. It was about 12, 14 people. And it was a wonderful experience. Everybody got along great, and it was a lot of fun. It was during the ride to the top. We were basically at that time opening up for Motley Crue, So things got a little bit more focus.
Yeah. But was she calling the shots on what the album cover should be or what the singles should be or any of that stuff? Or was that too behind the scenes between her and David as the kind of the leader?
To be honest with you, she wasn't really involved in the making of the 87 record.
Okay.
Because they weren't really an item yet. They became an item after the Still of the Night video.
Okay.
And by then everything is in the can. Oh, the album cover's done, things are being shipped, there's right. Okay. So comes what's known as the Slip of the Tongue record that was released in in the winter of '89, by going, it started in 1990 tour. It was released on my birthday, November 18th, 1989. And that one, there was some dynamics and politics that Tawny might have been influential.
Okay.
And I say might is because, during the making of a record, we're not on top of each other. We're like, we come in, we do pre-production, we work together, we do our parts. We spent a lot of time and not in the recording per se, but in the process, meaning pre-production. And then we went in the studio, recorded basic tracks. Adrian injured his hand, which meant that there was a stop, put on pause the recording process, look for an official guitar player to join. That was Steve Vai. Well, now we're on double duty because we have two studios running at the same time. We have Vai's recording studio with Mike Klink producing the guitars, and then Keith Olsen in Goodnight LA, which is basically this Keith, he has his own studio, or used to, rest in peace, in Los Angeles. So there were two things going on. One studio with Keith Olsen, and Davis doing his vocals. There's some keyboards going on. And so it was kind of like a mad rush to finish the record. All that's going on. It's very hard to keep tap on like, okay, who's going to decide on this about the album cover and this and that. And there's so much going on. All we want to do is get to the finish line.
Yeah.
Get the record done. Get it released on time for the label to release it to coincide with the pending tour. That tour date's already been booked.
Yeah.